welcome to the Rum Revival. My name's Arminder, and today I want to share with you my rum journey. My story as a rum drinker, as someone who loves rum, and as the person in front of you who just happens to have a rum YouTube channel. Think of this as my origin story through the lens of rum, and specifically, I want to tell that story by highlighting 5 key rums on that journey. So yeah, the idea is you're going to learn a thing or two about me and some of the rums that got me here today. Some of the stuff that you're going to find out about me, you probably will have wished that you hadn't. That's okay. And then the rest of it will be whatever. Let's talk about the first rum on this list, which happens to be the very first rum I ever had. And if I'm being honest, if I really think about it hard enough, probably is the rum that I've probably consumed the most of in my lifetime. It's not a rum that I've consumed a bunch of in the last, say, decade, but prior to that, you better believe it, I drank a crap ton of it. Now, in terms of what it is, it's the one and only Malibu. Yes, this is not a joke. It was indeed Malibu. And I know what you're probably thinking. If you know a thing or two about Malibu, you might be saying, hey, bud, that's not a rum, that's a liqueur. And you'd be right. But guess who didn't know that back in the day? This guy. To me, it was rum. I mean, it was, palm trees, tropical trees. It said Malibu on there and it had coconut, and that to me, rum, the perception always was, even before as a drinker, that rum was tropical, right? It was beaches. It was, pina coladas, vacation in a glass, right? So, of course, when Malibu was around, when I first was exposed to it, like, yeah, of course this is rum. It does say white rum here, but with coconut liqueur. It's 21% ABV. It's not a rum. But I didn't know that. And at the time, I 100% thought that this was a rum for a very long time, longer than I care to admit. And yes, I drank a crap ton of this stuff. Did not drink it neat. I drank it like I think most people did with some pineapple juice. I think that might have been one of our signature cocktails at our wedding. Yeah, Malibu and pineapple. So I figured I haven't had this in a very long time. Wouldn't it be fun if I cracked this open and took a sip and really tried it in Malibu and pineapple, because that's how I primarily drank it. So let's start with that. And then if I work up the courage, I'll try it neat as well. All right, so I've got my little glass full of ice, got some pineapple juice, and got the Malibu. So let's do this. And obviously, the time was not very precise. It was just kind of like you put a little bit of this, you put a little bit of that, so that's what we're gonna do. Oh yeah, fresh. Oh, that smells like farts. Ugh. Here goes nothing. Cheers. I mean, if I'm being real, it's not like revolting, It's just sweet, and the super artificial coconut flavor kind of sort of tastes like suntan lotion. If I'm being real, I thought I might have like this big, crazy, over-the-top reaction to how nasty it is, but I don't, It's kind of engineered to be middle of the road and sweet and appealing, and that's kind of what this is. Now, though, that being said, I should try the Malibu neat to get a true sense of it. Honestly, it doesn't smell like anything. A little lotiony, I guess. A little faint hit now of that artificial kind of coconut, but it's not aggressive. Okay, that's not good. With the pineapple juice, it was tolerable, it was fine. This is, that just gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. Honestly, it just tastes like simple syrup. That's fine, but you're not drinking simple syrup neat. At least I'm not. And that's kind of exactly what this tastes like. Up front, there's a little bit of coconut, and then it just turns into simple syrup. Yeah, I'm good. I actually need to drink some of the Malibu pineapple to wash that down. I somehow like this less now after having had that. Oh. Okay, so let's move on to the next rum. So at some point, I was drinking a lot of Malibu, and I was like, okay, this is who I am. I'm maybe a rum guy. That's, if someone asks me what's my spirit of choice, it's rum. And at some point, I had some friends who were going to buy me a present. My friend, her father was really into rum, like real rum, not like Malibu. And so they asked him, like, hey, we have a friend, we want to give him a present. Well, what should we get him? So he told them what to get, and they got me, which is this next rum, my very first real rum. Not only my very first real rum, but also at the time, what felt like the most luxurious item that I ever owned. And that was Brugal 1888. Now, this is like the new look and feel of the brand, but the bottle I got was 1 or 2 rebrands ago, I want to say. It came in a box, and that was fancy. And I think it also came in a net. And look, come on, how can you not immediately be impressed by the netting? I never had owned anything that came in netting before, so it just felt like this amazing, height of luxury. And here I had this, and I was like, wow, this net and this box are really making me think thoughts of becoming like a refined gentleman who, wears like a smoking coat and sits on a high back chair and, does this to the rum and like a brandy snifter. Like I was like, ooh, wow, maybe that's who I am, Maybe I am like this kind of suave, sophisticated rum drinker, this Malibu pineapple thing, that's for the masses, but I am going to really cherish and savor these flavors of this rum, this Brugal 1888. I remember my very first time opening this, cracking it open and pouring myself a pour, decent sized pour, and taking a sip of it and immediately just burning the inside of my mouth and being like, coughing and being like, this is the nastiest thing in the world. How can anyone drink, not just, it wasn't that, how can anyone drink Brugal 1888? How can anyone like drink alcohol neat? That really was the kind of thing in my mind. Like I'd probably had a sip or 2 of Crown or anything else, and all of that just felt like fire, in my mouth and down my throat, down my palate. And this was exactly the same experience. It was just intense and too bold and just made water, tear out of my eyes and all that. I was like, this is not for me. I'm gonna stick with my Malibu and pineapple. After that one bottle, I have not had Brugal 1888 since. So I figured I bought this bottle, let's crack it open and see if I still feel that way about this rum. Now, this is a 40% ABV rum, and I'm pretty sure it was back then as well. So let's see how this is. Do I feel the same way? Oh, wow. On the nose, I like a little bit of chocolate, molasses, a little bit of like cherry. Definitely a bit on the sweeter. You can just kind of smell a little bit of sweetness there. All right, cheers. Yeah, obviously it doesn't burn now. Feels like water, which it didn't at the time. That 40% ABV. I'm so used to drinking stuff high 40s, low to mid 50s and all that this really feels super, super thin now. There's a decent amount of like barrel note, sweetness and all that, which for some reason I didn't really pick up back then. I wasn't ready. My palate wasn't ready for that. Definitely pick it up here. This is perfectly just okay. Like I'm not saying this is a bad rum. It's not something I think I would necessarily reach for. It's just too thin, too watery, a bit too sweet for my kind of palate. It's not like a sugar bomb, but it just, there's not enough nuance there to kind of keep me engaged maybe. But I'm so surprised I didn't pick up on any of that to kind of hook me all those years ago. Because I feel like I would have enjoyed this, but I guess not. I guess I didn't. And the crazy thing is how much it felt like fire water, back then, and now it just feels like water. I realized, okay, I'm not gonna drink this neat, but I felt very bad because my friends had spent a lot of money. It was a very meaningful gift. Again, luxury and all that, and I felt really bad of just leaving it in the pantry to collect dust. So I figured, okay, well, I do like my Malibu and pineapple. I like mixing cocktails, so I'm gonna use this as a mixer. And I did that, and I tried a couple different things, and I want to share with you the kind of go-to recipe that I used with this. It was, I don't think I even really measured. It was just kind of equal parts this, and then some peach liqueur, some creme de pêche. Take this, if you don't know this is like 20% ABV, super sweet, supposed to taste like peach, and I think this bottle might be from over 10 years ago, 15 years ago maybe, and I would roughly like equal parts pour this into the rum. Yeah, so we'll give it a little mix like this, and I remember loving this cocktail and drinking a crap ton of it, and we'll see if it holds up. Cheers. That is the sweetest thing I've ever tasted. And it just tastes nothing but like artificial peach. Ugh. I need to like scrape my tongue with something. Ugh. I can't believe I actually served this to people. I think thanks to the Brugal, I realized that, rum as a sipping kind of thing wasn't really for me. It just burned too much, I couldn't handle it. And why spend all that money on those kind of nicer, expensive rums where if I was really enjoying them, and why waste that money on mixing with them? So I was just gonna still be in a rum, but just on the mixing side of things, right? But at that point, I probably had Bacardi. So, that's kind of where I kind of stayed on the rum side of things until I actually lived where I lived at the time. I lived in Oakland, and I want to say maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles from St. George Spirits. They were one of the earliest kind of American craft distilleries. They, at the time, were known for their Hangar One vodka. This was before they sold it off. And I think at the time was fairly newish-ish, their lineup of gins, which are still, I think, fairly popular today. Their Terroir, their Botanivore, and the other one. And I love those things so much. I like their Hangar One vodka too. So I was a huge fan. I was all in on St. George. And then one day they launched a rum, a white rum. And I was like, this is what? Yes, totally buying this right away. And I did. And that is my third rum. It's the St. George, California Agricole Rum. I'm gonna make a bunch of cocktails with this stuff. I'm gonna try it in pineapple juice. I'm gonna try it with the peach liqueur and all that. See how it goes. And of course, the first thing I did after buying this was pour myself a little taste. And it was the nastiest thing I had ever tasted. It was like just eating a spoonful of grass or like taking a bite out of a bell pepper. It was the most revolting thing I had ever tasted at the time. Because, as if you didn't know from the title, this is a rum made from cane juice because it's called California Agricole Rum. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that would mean for the flavor of the rum. So I immediately was regretting my decision of buying this rum. I tried it in some cocktails. All I could taste was the grass, the green, the vegetal herbaceousness, and it was a big regret. I don't know how expensive it was, but I remember regretting wasting money on it. So this rum here, this third one right here on this list, is my very first cane juice rum. And maybe the first rum that I hated with a passion, maybe, potentially. Yeah, this went and stayed in my pantry. And I'm surprised that it kind of stayed with me for the course of like 2 or 3 moves, given the fact that this was a very long time ago and my palate has changed and I do now like cane juice rums. It'd be interesting to see how this tastes, so let's pour ourselves a little taste. This is bottled at 43% ABV. Oh, I think that smells very nice, but I'm sure at the time I was like, what is this? Yeah, it's soft, but it has actually a little bit of good black olive brine note, which I'm sure, I don't know if my sense of smell was to the point where I would have been able to say that was olive. I just thought it was vile. Yeah, I'm getting actually a lot of black olive, which is really nice. Usually in cane juice rums, agricoles and whatnot, I would get like olive and brine, but it never feels specifically like black olives. But a lot of that on this. The black olives have that kind of slightly umami kind of quality to them. I'm totally getting that here. That is kind of a cool experience. I think I clearly wasn't ready for it at the time. Having not had any other cane juice rums, they can be intense, right? They're such a different experience than molasses-based rums, whether aged a very long time or lightly aged. This is just kind of obviously a different part of the flavor spectrum and flavor profile. And if you've never had them, I don't see how you could get into them right away. I mean, if you can, that's great, but I could not. I bounced right off it and swore off cane juice rums. That is my experience with this rum here, the third one on the list. Maybe a couple years later, and then I started going to tiki bars, which I wasn't really so much doing in the Malibu pineapple phase or the Brugal and the peach liqueur phase, but now I was. I mean, again, the Bay Area also still to this day has an amazing number of tiki bars, right? And in the East Bay, between Forbidden Island, Trader Vic's, at the time it was Longitude, and eventually Kon-Tiki, And then obviously Smuggler's Cove across the bay in San Francisco, just a ridiculous number of great tiki bars. And that's when I started exploring and trying tiki drinks and falling in love with them. Over the course of the next couple of years, even while I was bartending, I slowly built up a collection of maybe 5 to 6 bottles of rum used to make cocktails at home. And that was a decent collection. I was happy with it. It was in my pantry. Take it out to make a Mai Tai or a Planter's Punch or, a handful of cocktails I could make. I was really happy. Again, it wasn't even about the rums. It was about the rums serving the purpose of making specific cocktails. So it was really about the cocktails. So when it comes to the rum journey and telling about that, it wasn't any one specific rum at that point in my life that really stood out. Now that gets us to our 4th rum on this list. And this was a gift. Like I think the Brugal was also a gift. This was also a gift. This was from my sister-in-law and her husband. And they gave me this bottle, and I knew the price. It was like $60, $70. And I was like, one, blown away that they would spend that much money on me, but also knowing that must mean, it's okay. It's expensive, so you kind of have to treat it with like that kind of somewhat reverence, I guess, because it's expensive. Whatever, at the time, this is what I was thinking, and I was kind of like really impressed that they had spent this money on me. Again, it also came in a box, so this felt kind of luxurious. I cracked it open, so I tried it neat, knowing that, I don't really like rum neat, but, again, I have to do this because they spent this money and it's a thoughtful gift. And I tried it, and I liked it. Like, I liked it neat, and it didn't burn, and it didn't taste nasty. It actually felt like it was tasty. So this 4th rum then is the kind of first sipping rum that I owned, that I liked, that I actually enjoyed sipping, and that is Angostura 1824. They got rebranded, I think, into this design 2016, 2017 maybe. It was enjoyable, tasting experience, and I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I might be into sipping rums neat, or certain rums neat, because the ones that were in my pantry to make cocktails with, I tried them and weren't for me. But this, I really dug, and I have not had it since I finished that initial bottle that they got me in 2016, 2017, wherever it was. So let's crack it open and see how it tastes. A bottle at 40% ABV from Angostura, Trinidad. This was not distilled in 1824. I want to say maybe this is rums between 8 to 10 years old, or 10 to 12, I'm not too sure. A little bit of lychee, which is a note I will often call out in certain Trinidad rums. Yeah, it's like a little bit of lychee, the little bit of like fruit cocktail syrup, the little bit of brown sugar, some little molasses. Pretty enjoyable and lively, actually. Pretty lively and vivid on the aroma. All right, cheers. Wow, I like that more than I thought I would. I thought going into this that, this thing, I'm pretty sure it's sweetened, I don't know how much sugar's added, but I really thought looking back at it, why I liked it back then was probably because it was sweetened. But tasting it now, I'm sure it still is, but I'm getting these really interesting complex, like electrified lychee notes, this little touch smoky. I don't think these are flavor profiles or notes that I would have really been into in 2016 or 2017 whenever I had this, but I guess I did like it. Even though it's 40% ABV, this has a little more heft to it than the Brugal. Although now, the other thing that just I didn't pick up till now was that the Brugal 1888 and then the Angostura 1824. What is it with me getting gifts with rums that have like a date from the 1800s on there? I don't know why those have significance in my life, but they do. Weird. Surprising. I can see why I was into this rum. It's got complexity and nuance. There's a little bit of sweetness, which kind of helps, but didn't feel one note. And I think at that point where I was, I liked some complexity in my cocktails. I like my tiki drinks to have some complexity. I could see that kind of spilling over to my rums, and suddenly there were some certain things to kind of grab onto. I'm not saying this is amazing. It's not probably a rum I'm going to reach for a bunch to sip on now, but if I wanted something low in ABV with a little bit of interest to it, I potentially could reach for this. This is, again, not bad. go me. So I wanted to include this rum on the list because yes, this was the first rum I think that I really truly enjoyed sipping neat, did solely for that and not like mixing in cocktails. So I think that has significance. Given how much I now love sipping rums neat, this was kind of the first one. But I think that was less important than this next story about this rum and why this rum has even more significance to me. So my wife had bought a bar cart to have in our living room, not to actually to put bottles on. All of our bottles were in our pantry, but really as a, like a piece of furniture to put various knickknacks and pictures on actually. She said, hey, it'd be nice if you place this on the cart. So, I did that, placed it there, walked upstairs, went upstairs, did whatever. Some amount of time later, like a half an hour later, an hour later, came back downstairs, walked downstairs to the living room, and I saw the bar cart there with this bottle sitting there. And something in my brain, something happened. Something primal kind of went off. And just seeing this bottle on that bar cart just unlocked something in me, if I'm being real. It made me want to put other bottles on that bar cart. Just fill up that bar cart with other bottles. But not like the other cocktail-focused rums I had in my pantry. No. I wanted to put other expensive, fancy bottles of rum on that bar cart. There was just something about that. Like I was like, that looks good. That feels right. That is exactly what's supposed to happen in that space, in my house, in my life. And that needs to be what happens. There was that element of it, but the other, which at the time I don't think I was aware of it, but now in hindsight, I'm very much aware of why I felt the need to display this rum and other bottles on that bar cart. If I had this on display out for anyone to see and other bottles from other parts of the Caribbean, other parts of the world, they would see these bottles and they'd be like, wow, Arminder has such amazing, refined taste. Look at him, rum. Wow, when most people are drinking vodka or Crown Royal, I don't know why I'm picking Crown, but yeah, a Crown, he's got this really eclectic and interesting taste. So, if I'm being real, there's this element of wanting to show off and be different and stand out, this very real, needy, narcissistic aspect of my personality really kind of bubbled up the moment I saw this on the bar cart, and I needed people to see that I had stuff like this, that I was into stuff like this. Now in hindsight, it's kind of embarrassing, and I'd like to think I'm not like that anymore. Who knows? But if I'm being very real, that was a big kind of switch that went off in my mind at that moment. So, and I tell you all this because then seeing this bottle on that bar cart and the fact that I liked sipping this neat became this kind of catalyst to buy other rums that were a little pricier, that were a little bit more sipping kind of focused. So then I went and bought a bunch of bottles over the next couple of years, 2017, 2018, 2019. I started buying and quote unquote collecting bottles, putting in my bar cart, having a sense of pride, of ownership, of look at that cool display. In a way, it's no different than like having a bookcase and having people kind of come by and look at your bookcase and like them, look and hopefully see how great of taste you have in literature. Kind of the same thing. Again, not proud about it, but it is what it is. But by doing that, by becoming a bit of a collector, a hoarder, if you will, for bottles, I got to then try a bunch of different rums. And by doing that and realizing, okay, I actually do have a palate for these things in terms of sipping them neat, I got to expose myself to rums from all over the world, right? From all over the Caribbean, in terms of different production processes. And I became a fan of rum. Finally, I'd say I became someone who actually authentically, it took some selfish reasons, but finally got to a point where I really did enjoy sipping rum neat. And so yeah, thanks to the Angostura 1824, fell in love with all sorts of different rums, except for cane juice rums. Wasn't quite there, right? The California Agricole from St. George, was a turnoff. And at that point, I had a bunch of tiki cocktails and got to try cane juice rums and rum agricoles. In some of those, got to try tea punches, and I bounced off that stuff pretty quickly. So those weren't for me. I got into enjoying and savoring rums neat. I also became someone who really loved reading about rum, research and just whatever I could find. as well as watching rum content, right? Because YouTube was around, of course, and there's tons of rum content, interviews with producers, podcasts with producers, with salespeople, and I wanted to just consume as much as possible to learn because I was enjoying these rums. I was noticing nuances and differences between distilleries, between countries. I just wanted to know why and how and whatnot, right? And so I started doing more and more of that. And what happened, I think these had already been out for a while, but this fifth and final rum that I want to talk about, I found it, I think, and it's kind of the rest of the rums in its lineup in a YouTube video. I'm pretty sure. It was some sort of YouTube video or was it a podcast? I'm not sure. But it was this amazing, engaging story and narrative. And the spirit was hyper specific and local to a region and to one individual producer. And hearing that and hearing these stories about this producer and the other producers of the other spirits in the lineup blew me away. I was like, wait, rum can be more than just the bottle and the label. It can be about people and countries and regions and history and legacy and like generations of people producing this stuff, even on a small scale. I kind of fell in love with that idea. So this next rum, the fifth and final one on the lineup, is Clairin Sauvignon. So this is a Clairin from Haiti. It's an unaged cane juice spirit from Haiti. So even though I don't like cane juice rums, with hesitation, I bought myself a bottle. And I tried it. Didn't hate it, didn't love it. It was fine. It was just like, okay, I had this much and it's cool. I could see why people are into it. I think I love the idea behind it more. I love the information on the label and I love the storytelling that Kate and Levinson and Valier were doing, but it just wasn't for me, you know? So, I had this much and it went into my pantry and that was it. It stayed in my pantry where it was maybe doomed to stay there until I bought myself a copy of this book right here. This is Tiki, Modern Tropical Cocktails by Shannon Mustafer. And in this, she has a recipe for a Port-au-Prince, which is kind of like a classic tiki drink, that specifically calls for saw juice. And I was flipping through this, and I was like, oh wait, I have that bottle. Let me go make this drink. And I did. And I have one right here. And I remember it was summertime, 2019, 2020 or 2019, which is one of those two. And it was incredibly hot, 90 plus degrees. I made myself this, I was outside, and I took a sip, and it was just like, as cliched as this sounds, it was a little bit like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz in black and white, stepping outside of her house and walking into the land of Oz and suddenly it being in Technicolor. That's how it felt, like all those flavors. There's grenadine in here, there's lime, pineapple juice, a little bit of overproof Demerara rum, 2 ounces of the Sauvignon, and they all come together and it's just this kaleidoscopic array of all these unique flavors. And it was amazing. I'd never really had quite tiki cocktail like that or a rum cocktail. Definitely not a cane juice spirit cocktail like that ever. And it blew me away. So since I got one here, I'm gonna take a sip. Cheers. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It is one of my favorite cocktails, hands down. And it has this lovely note of like mango, a little bit of like floral tea, like a chamomile. Eventually, I bought my second bottle. I was making some of these, again, middle of the summer. And I was making the drink and I realized, crap, I'm out of grenadine. And I had nothing that was even close to it for a sub. It's like, well, I can't make this drink anymore. But I really love the drink. Man, and it was really hot. So for some reason, I decided to take the Sauvignon and just make a tea punch. A little bit of cane syrup, a little squeeze of lime, and some of this. And because it was so hot and I wanted to drink it outside, I put a couple cubes of ice in there and I drank that tea punch. And it, to this day, is probably the most memorable tea punch I've ever had because what blew me away was how much of the flavors of this cocktail I was getting in there. The note of the mango, the note of the chamomile. I was like, wait, what? What just happened here? And by trying a bunch of more tea punches over the next week, eventually making some grenadine, trying more of the Port-au-Princes next to the tea punches, realizing that flavors I was really enjoying, that wild taste of mango, the wild chamomile, was less so about the cocktails, and it was really the spirit. That flavor was all coming from here. Like this was the prime star, both of this and the tea punch. And that is when I decided to pour myself a neat pour of the Sajus again, finally, after a while. And that sip, that pour was phenomenal. Loved it. Fell in love with Sajus. And it was by trying it neat, not liking it, trying it in cocktails, really liking it, falling in love with it, and then having that palate develop so that when I tried it neat, I was ready for it. So yeah, this is on my list because it is obviously the first cane juice kind of spirit that I fell in love with. So let's actually go ahead and give a little quick taste to the Sajus. Yeah, I get that kind of chamomile on the nose. Oh, that's so good. I mean, come on. That is spectacular. Which is not a word I use often. I should use that more often. That's amazing. And I can recognize that chamomile, that floral tea note. But there is, yes, there's some kind of green grass, but there's this kind of guava mango note that's there, which gets heightened in this cocktail. That you can pick up a little bit more in the tea punch as well. But there's a second reason that it's on this list. And that goes back to what I was telling the story about learning about this and being impressed with the storytelling and how it was related, focused on Michel Sajus and his village in Haiti. That storytelling really blew me away and it stayed with me. Stayed with me for another year or so. Like everyone has a COVID or origin story or a story they have to tell about their time during COVID. And I was just so obsessed at this point with cane juice spirits, cane juice rums. And at that point I was buying rum agricoles, Mexican cane juice spirits, and trying them in cocktails, trying them in tea punches, trying them neat and loving them so much, and neat in cocktails, you name it. Suddenly fell head over heels, and there was still the similar element with the clarin of the people, the places, how they're hyper specific to a region, a language, a history, a family, and all that, and just absorbing all that, falling in love with all that. And I just was bursting with all of this love and enthusiasm and all this stories that I was consuming, that I wanted to tell those stories, that I wanted to share that enthusiasm, those stories, those countries, those regions, those people with other people. I really needed to. Now, we were in the height of COVID, so there weren't a whole lot of opportunities to hang out with folks and do that. And I didn't really get my act together. You might be seeing where this is going. I didn't get my act together during COVID to maybe stick a camera in front of me to tell those stories. But when it came out of COVID times, I did indeed. Not this camera here, actually it was my iPhone, stuck it on a little tripod and started telling stories about the various rums that I was really into and trying to tell stories about the people or how they were made, some of that aspect of it, the stuff that I was really loving and appreciating. I just wanted to share that. So what was 2.5 years now on Instagram, started releasing videos. I think I did one on Sajus fairly early. It was one I was very excited about, and I just continued and it snowballed to at some point realizing I had a lot to say, and the short time span of Instagram wasn't enough time to tell those stories, so shifted to starting doing YouTube videos or doing both of them in parallel, but realizing YouTube is where I could really talk and share those stories, share my enthusiasm and my love for Sajus, for other cane juice rums, but just other rums in general, period, all of them, right? And that's what I've been doing now for 2.5 years, and it's been amazing. But none of that would have happened if it wasn't for Sajus. If it wasn't for how much I fell in love with it, thanks to this book and this cocktail, and that hot summer, and the tea punches, as well as Kate Perry's storytelling, Lebesson and Vellier's storytelling. I don't know if I'd be here. I don't know if I'd be here telling you all this stuff. So this is obviously on this list for very good reason, and frankly, again, will probably always be my favorite spirit, period. It's a bold claim. It feels like a pretty intense thing to say, but it feels right. At least it feels right in the moment. That's all that matters. That is my fifth and final rum on my rum journey. Well, there you go. That was my rum journey in 5 bottles. I'm curious, what's your rum journey? What are some key or meaningful rums on that journey for you? Maybe it was your first rum or the rum that made you fall in love with rum. I'd love to know what those bottles are. So please, if you can, leave a comment down below to let me know. I will read all of them and I'm super excited to see what those rums are for you. Now, if you're interested in some exclusive behind the scenes content and first impressions videos where I try a rum for the very first time and give you my gut reaction to it, then consider checking out and supporting me on Patreon. I have tons of content there that I think you'll really like. Thanks so much for watching. I'm gonna go finish my Port-au-Prince. Catch y'all next time. Cheers.